Welcome back to another installment of Learning React. Today is going to be just an open-ended talking about stuff and things. And anyone who wants to just throw out a topic, we can discuss it, get some extra homework help. Um, the official assignment is on CSS. And from what I saw, it was fairly straightforward and open-ended, the assignment. I'm happy to walk through that in my lesson today as part of that. If you all want, just let me know. If not, I had some other ideas, just open-ended discussion. And if that doesn't get flowing, then another idea was people could suggest that I try building out different things on the internet, like find something on a website and go, I want to learn how to build that. And I could see if I can try it out just as a fun challenge. Um, so yeah, I'll let you all kind of guide where this session goes today. Um,
Okay. I I don't want to take over, but I did. So it all I want to do is have my div in the center of the page, and then because I'm a little bit like I know how to apply the CSS via React, but I've never been like the best at it. And obviously, like I thought if I use like with percentages, it would prevent it from looking weird, but when you scrunch down the page, it looks weird. Um, I tried flex. Um, Essentially what I'm saying is that like I'm struggling to just have my like to-do list. I just because I was just trying to do something simple so I could test it out. Have it in the middle of the page, and then no matter how far you stretch the page, it's just always gonna stay in the center. And I couldn't get that successfully.
okay, how to center a div. Um, the age-old question in CSS. Yeah, so I'd love to get started with that. So let's see. Because I fully relate, and every developer over the years has struggled with that same issue. Um, it's kind of a meme at this point, centering a div. I think there's even bumper stickers that say, "How do you center a div?" Um, so it's gotten a lot easier over the years, as I've heard. There didn't used to be Flexbox. So it used to be that the way to center would be doing like some CSS float thing with some doing like math to figure out the width of your element. And then there was all this complicated stuff. Flexbox made it a lot easier. So that's the main way that I would use, and I'll show you how to do it using Flexbox. Um, so I'll share my screen. Um, and I haven't opened my app. Yeah, I didn't really prepare it for this lesson, but we'll see where I'm at. Um, so can everyone see my screen? Okay,
Yes, you.
I can see it.
cool. Okay, so I'm gonna do npm start, right? Uh, npm run dev, I mean. I'm pretty sure in the old version of Create React App, it was npm start, but they changed it. Okay, and then I'll open up a new browser window. Okay, so this is the current state of my app. I've been doing all this crazy, like weird, I had like frogs, I think, at some point, and then geese, and uh, what else? Mooses, and now cats. Um, I'm gonna, for this lesson today, I'm gonna uh, get rid of all of the cat stuff that's going on because if we're I want to do like a blank slate with the CSS. And so let me start by just deleting all my CSS and all the crazy cat stuff going on. So cat magic, that was what was making this whole crazy cat situation where there's like cats floating around the screen randomly. So I'm going to get rid of that.
You deleted it so quickly, but I also noticed you had left out something in one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious what it was. I did notice I deleted some, well, there's something that wasn't in Git already, but that's fine. Um, okay, deleting all of my CSS. And I'm probably going to get some errors. I probably need to do, I had my main.jsx is importing this, and I need to get rid of that and those two. And delete that. And should be good now, but apparently not. Failed to load resource cat list item.jsx. Okay, need to restore that. Just by the way, if you have something in Git, you can go to your source control panel here, and then it'll show you the changes you made. And any file that you deleted or any changes you made to it, you can click this discard changes to unchange a file. It reverts the file back to before you, like to your previous commit state. You can do it on a per file basis. You can do it for all the files since your last commit. So there, I realized I deleted this cat list item and I wanted to restore it. So I used that source control panel to restore it. So let's see. Okay. Works now. Okay. So we have this default cat list without any CSS going on. And I'll full screen it so you can see it. So no CSS and it looks bad. So how do we the first thing we're going to do is center everything. And so we're going to do that using Flexbox. And I'll maybe like make that window take up half and then this window take up half. Okay. So in our index.css, so we have an index.css and an app.css. Our index.css is kind of like global. It's like everything. And our app.css, well, it's also kind of global. I haven't really figured out what's the best way to divide your CSS styles between index and app because they both kind of have like a global scope over your app. But maybe for my index.css, I'll just put like the actual global stuff. Like if I'm referring to the kind of base HTML element, like the document element. So in my index.css, um, wait, main.jsx gets our index.css. How about I ignore the index.css? I don't need that for now. I'll do everything in the app.css. And I'll close all the open editors that aren't those two, just so we can only focus on these two today. Or I'll probably get to the others in a bit. Okay, so our app, if we go down to the JSX, we have this browser router, which is making the code look a little bit different. But basically what we have is a main element. And you might not have that, but I like to I like to have a main Here, I'll show you here. So uh, in like default HTML, what I'll typically do is main. I'll just show you the hierarchy that I usually go with. Main and then header. And I'm writing this stuff out just on its own, just so that you can see it. This isn't actual code I'm going to use. Um, I'm just writing this so you can see how I kind of structure my JSX or HTML for like a web page. So typically, so you might have seen you have a head element in your index.html. You have this. So this is my index.html. You have your boilerplate HTML code, right? And then you have a head. The head is metadata. This is all stuff like the title right there, which shows up in your tab right there. It's like the name of the web page, stuff like that. That's in your head component. And then you have your body component, and all your actual style or all your actual elements, HTML elements, are in your body element. So um, in a React app, we also have this div called root, div with an ID of root, and that's where our actual React app gets rendered. If I deleted that, the React app would go away because this is where it's like where your React app actually attaches to. Um, so what I just wanted to show is that you have this head and then body. And the head is all the metadata. The body does not have metadata. The body is actually the content of your website. In our app.jsx, I usually will have like a main. Um, well, basically, what I want to say is that header is a different element from head. Header is an actual like section of your web page, whereas head is metadata. I just wanted to point that out because that can get confusing. So I will usually have a header, a main, and a footer. Um, sorry, I know I'm kind of veering off course, Grant, but I think this is somewhat important. Uh, so header and then header will typically have a nav, and then your nav will be where your nav elements are, like your nav bar. Um, and then in your main, I would typically have sections, and then each section of your web page will have different elements inside of it. Um, like you could have divs, and I mean, these could all be divs. None of these HTML elements here actually have styles on their own. They're all just like the same as just divs, but it's part of what's called semantic HTML. You want to make your HTML tags actually describe the content that's in them, even though you can style them however you want and put any content in them that you want. If you actually use section like HTML tags for what they're meant for, um, it makes your page easier for people to read who have like screen readers. Um, so people who are like uh, blind. And it also is better for SEO, search engine optimization, which makes sure that your website gets like put at the towards the top of the search results in like Google. Because web crawlers are what index your site, and they want to see that you actually have these different sections, and they want to basically it's important for them. So that's the typical structure, and then I would have multiple sections for different parts. And each section might have divs and other things inside of it. So for this page, we don't need a header or a footer yet because it's just a to-do list. So I'm just going to have a main with a section, and then I'm going to center that section and show you how I do that. So I have main, and then I don't have a section yet, but let's make a section. So section, and then I'm going to wrap all this stuff inside of it. So now I have an H2 called cats. add cat form. I have this check. This is a conditional rendering thing, which basically says if the is loading state variable is true, show this, false, show the cat list. So we can imagine that it's probably just going to show the cat list for most of the time. So basically what we have is a main, a section, an H1, and our cat list. The cat list itself is an unordered list with some cats. Okay, that's kind of the basic structure. So what we want to do is we want to center this. Let's center this section in the page. So um, I'm going to say, let's just go to our app.jsx and let's do a selector for section. And just to make sure that it's working, let's do background color red. That's just something that I use to test. Okay, so we can see it's red. So the CSS is linked. It's linked up here. We have an import app.css. And actually, let's do JSX or React modules or whatever, CSS modules. So I'm going to change. So there's different ways you might have learned in the lesson today. There's different ways of doing CSS in React. So this way that we've been doing is just you're importing your entire style sheet like normal. But then another way to do it is with modules. So you can do app.module.css. You rename your file. And then in our app.jsx, I need to do import style, or I guess styles from app.module.css. And now this styles thing will end up being an object, a JavaScript object that actually has all the different styles as properties. And so I can say styles, go down here. For our section, I would do class name equals, I think I'm doing this right, styles dot section. Oh, not working.
Well, you also don't have the period in front of the class for,
Oh
well, that
yeah.
makes no sense.
No,
Uh,
I think we would want that. That's a good call out. Honestly, I don't use I should use them, but I don't use CSS modules often, so I don't know why my computer's being all slow all of a sudden. Weird.
are you okay? Sorry, you were staring so hard, I thought you froze.
I might have froze. My computer's being so slow. Okay, I think I'm gonna close out of some tabs or some windows here. I have some like I had a lot of tabs open. Okay, we're back. My computer seems faster now. Let's see. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so that worked. Okay, we have a section, we have a background color, and we can change it. And yeah, so we have CSS modules set up here. Um, and the way that I kind of name and style my or like organize my classes, there's basically two different ways that people do it. One would be like um, naming or having a style for each individual um, element. So like um, classes that target elements, which would be like we have our section here. Or you could even have it be even more specific, and we could do like to do list container or something like that. That would be classes that target elements, something like that. And then you can also have utility classes. Utility classes would be something like, um, I mean, section is kind of a utility class, but it would be more like um, error, color, red. And then now if you have a utility class like this, then you could basically make it so that you pull that class. You could have like multiple classes in you could do like class name styles dot error, and you could apply like a series of classes to each individual element. So you're kind of like building up the styles in your HTML or in your JSX for each element. Um, that's utility classes where you basically have like a bunch of classes that do this generic thing, and then you add the classes to your elements in your HTML. And then the other way is you have your classes where basically each class targets a specific element. So either your CSS is like targeting a specific element, or you're actually you're adding classes, um, multiple classes to each element based on its use. Different ways to do that. I like doing the way where each element kind of has its own class dedicated to it. Um, so okay, so we have what were we doing? We're centering this div or this section. Sorry, went on a tangent. Okay, so to center it, we can do. We'd probably want to go to the parent element and make the parent element a flex box. Well, actually, let's try this. Margin auto, because that sometimes just does it. Nope, it doesn't. Okay. So there's this thing where if if you have when does margin auto work? I'm gonna look it up really quick. Um, CSS margin auto center element.
I think you have to have set a width for the element that you're using margin auto on.
Oh, okay. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, so if the element has a specified width, then margin auto will center it. So I could say width equals 20 rem and then margin auto. There we go. Okay, so that centers it. And let me do a background color so you can actually see where the section is. Background color. I'll just put it as blue, and then I'll like go in here and shift it to something that looks a little better. Let's do that. Okay. So first way to center something. First way to center an element is, how about I'll just do ways to center an element. And then the first is add margin auto and a specified width. So margin auto will basically say this element here, this section, the margins of it on either side will be determined so that it's centered basically. Like they're the max width that they can be. And if you set the margin auto on the left, then it would just shift it all the way to the right. So if I did like margin left auto, then it would send the whole thing to the right. And so that's actually a way to send something to the left or the right, is to set a margin auto. So, but margin auto, this does margin left, margin right, top and bottom auto. And the margin left and margin right are what's going to push it to the center. But it has to have a specified width. If it doesn't have a specified width, as we just saw, then it takes up the full width of the page. So there's no margins at all. That's on a block, an element that has like a, what is it? What are the things that are block? What are they called? Display. A display of block. If it has display of block, then it needs to have a specified width. If it doesn't, if it's an inline element, like span, then I don't think you need to add a specified width. And I can try that out. If I made this, instead of a section, I made it a span. Let's see. Span. Oh, it is still taking up. Oh, wait, no, because I actually, let me see. Display inline. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why that doesn't work, but whatever. Okay. So that's one way to center it, is you do that. Okay. The other way to center it too is put the element in a flex box and set the flex, or wait, set the justify content. And align items. How about and or align items properties to center? So a flex box. So I'll show you how you do that. So let's say we want this section to be centered. We would need the main to be the flex box. So I'll do like a utility component for this. I'll do like styles. And I haven't made this style yet, but I'm gonna make it. So I'm gonna do styles dot flex. And now I'm gonna go into my style sheet and make a new style called flex. And I'm gonna say display flex. And now if I remove margin and width from this, oh, okay. So I did display flex on the parent. And yeah, so display flex makes the child element have it squishes it. So now this section is squished to be as small as it can be. And then if I do justify content, to center, it will center it. So we put the section inside a flex box, and I could even call this like child, flex child. And then I'd have to go update that in here. I'd have to say styles dot flex child like that. I wonder if this will get automatically turned into camel case. Let's see. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't, because I already have background color. So I need to do that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the flex child, this is the child element of the flex box, and the flex box itself is what centers it. So the second way to center an element is to put it inside a flex box. And then on the flex box itself, you can use justify content center and align items center. Justify content. So a flex box has a direction, flex direction. And the default direction of a flex box is row, which means it's gonna place the items that are a child of the flex container. It's going to place them side by side in a row. And then you can also have and I'll show you with multiple. How about I just duplicate? I'll duplicate this whole section here. So we have multiple of these cat things, and then I'll do like a flex gap. Or wait, maybe it's just gap. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is row. This is a flex box that is aligning its items in a row, which kind of makes sense. If I do column, you'll see what that looks like. So column aligns them top to bottom. If it's in a row, then basically the values of justify content and this other property align items. Justify content and align items. These are the two things that tell the children elements in a flex box where to go. And so in a flex box that the flex direction is row, they're going to do the opposite from when it's column. So when the flex direction is row, justify content will center it along the row axis. So you can see what happens when I change this. So I can actually, there's a better way to show you this. I could pull up my dev tools, and here where I have this element with flex on it, I'm going to click that, open Flexbox editor, and then it'll actually show you can like change it in your dev tools. So I can change the flex direction here from row to column. So that's flex direction column, flex direction row. Align item, or let's do justify content. Justify content, when the flex direction is row, justify content centers it along the row, along the x-axis, or changes its position along the x-axis. So I can do justify content center, which centers it, flex start, flex end, space between, which makes the space between the flex items as far as possible, space around, which makes the space around each flex item equal, and then space evenly, which says it accounts for the fact that on space around, there will be a double space between two flex elements. So with this, the space between this item and the left wall is that, say this is one space, then the space between these two elements will be doubled. It'll be two. So the space in between is going to be double what it is from them in the actual container. Space evenly accounts for that. So it makes the space between the wall or the edge of the flex box and the items the same. Okay, so that's justify content if the flex direction is row. If I change the flex direction to column, though, it's going to do the opposite. And actually, none of these are going to change at all. I bet this isn't, yeah. None of these are going to do anything because the flex container is actually shrinking to be just the same height of these elements. So if I set a size for the container, I'll say like min height is equal to, let's do like 40 rem. So now if I do flex direction row, it'll actually give them some room on the top and bottom to be placed within this container. If you change the flex container, like if these properties aren't doing anything, then the flex container probably isn't big enough to make any difference to where the elements go. The children are squished where they're at. So I just set the flex container to be taller, and now they have some wiggle room. So we can do justify content, and it'll actually, you can see justify content, even though before when the flex direction was row, justify content was along the x-axis. If we set the flex direction to column, justify content now spaces them on the y-axis. So ideally, it would be nice if you just had a y-axis and an x-axis, and they were the same, no matter if the flex direction was row or column, but that's not the case. If you have the flex direction as column, then justify content is the y-axis, spaces them along the y-axis. If it's row, it spaces them along the x, and then vice versa for align items. So align items and justify content will space the items on different axes, the opposite axis from each other. And what the actual like documentation will say is justify content is always concerned with the main direction of the flex box. So if the flex direction is row, then justify content is like spacing them along the row. And align items is spacing them top to bottom in that row. So that's just, I guess, like an overview of Flexbox and how that all works. And definitely use this to play around with it if you are interested. And also play the game Flexbox Froggy if you haven't. Flexbox Froggy. This is a game which teaches you all those properties, and it's really fun. So like we want to get this frog to the lily pad, and the pond itself is a flex box. And so we want to figure out which properties to get this frog to be aligned where it needs to go. So here I would use, let's see, we're changing the pond, which is the flex box. And so the pond can actually align the items along, align the frog to its different area. So we want to do, let's see, the flex direction is row by default, and justify content is going to align along the row. So I'm going to do justify content row, and that should Oh, I got it wrong. Oh, justify content and then flex end. Yep. And that got the frog to where it needed to go. So now I could do justify content center, centers the frogs. It's a fun game for learning Flexbox. I'll put it in the chat. Okay, I feel like I'm going on a tangent. Um, but so to center a div, you can either add margin auto and then a specified width to the element, or you can put the element inside a flexbox and then use flex direction, or you don't need flex direction row. It's going to be row by default. You don't need align items. You just need justify content center. So place the items in a flex box, set the justify content and or align items properties to center. If the flex direction was column, then it would be align items. Flex direction column. We would want it to be align items, not justify content. If we don't have align items, it does that. If we do, then it does that. So for this specific project here, and these are the two best ways, I would say, for centering something. For this project here, the way I would do it is I would, actually, there's a third way. Okay, the way I would do this, and the way I think I did originally, is I did display flex on the parent container, and then I did, I don't think I did a flex direction. I think it was row by default because I only had one child element. But if you want to have like if we had I just duplicated this section here, but this is what your to-do list will look like at the moment. You have your heading, you have your form, and then you have your different items. So if you don't have them all in a section together, then you would want to do flex direction column so that each item will be on top of each other. The reason they're still on top of each other is because there's a parent element that's containing them all that has a display of block, or all the elements in here have display of block, which makes them the full width of their container, except for like a button, which is inline, or an input, which is inline. Okay. Then there's one other way, 3, which I don't know that well, but I do want to know more about it. There's a way to use a grid to do it, and it's like, I think you do, let's take this and let's call it container. Let's call the main element contain, or let's call it section. And then we can call this to do container. So I'm going to make my main element a section, and then this is going to be to do container. To do container here. And I think if I get rid of the flexbox, there's one more way to do it, which is using a grid. I set display grid on the parent. And then I think on the child element, I can do place, or wait, on the grid, I can do place items, right? Place items sets both the align items and justify. Oh, so it just does those both. The first value is the align items, and okay, so this place items, I guess, is align items and justify content in one. So place items center, that will center it. And then even if this was, if it had like a min height of 40 rem, it'll always, uh, oh, it doesn't send it. Huh, let's do 20. Oh, it must be that um,
I think that grid doesn't automatically restructure your page to make it look good on whatever browser size. Flexbox does it, but I think that with grid, if you wanted to do that, you would need like a media query so that it changes the display depending on the screen size.
oh, like for like wrapping items or something.
Yeah, for moving things around depending on how big the screen is.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that's good because I pretty much just use Flex for the most part. Display Flex, and then so let's ignore the third. Display Flex, and then um, justify content center. That's the way that I would do it. Okay. I know that was a very long-winded thing. Let's see. Did are you satisfied with that answer, Grant? I feel like I did a crazy detour on that conversation, but
I got it for the most part.
okay.
Thank you.
And then usually like it could be containers within containers. So you might end up with a lot of extra HTML elements to do the actual placement of things. So like, for example, if I want, okay, so I centered this whole thing. Actually, you might you might want it centered you might want it centered vertically too. So I'm going to do a line items center. Um, and okay, then the reason this isn't centering it vertically is because the height of this section, so it's aligning the content in the center of the section vertically, but the section itself is the same height as the element inside. And so if I want the items inside to be centered in my actual page, I need this section to be as tall as the page. So I would set a min height to like 100 view height units. And now this will be centered vertically and horizontally. And I could have, let's see, to do container. So let's have this blue. Okay. So that centers it vertically and horizontally. You have a section. The section needs to be the full width, which it's going to be the full width of the parent container by default because it's a block level element. But if it wasn't, then you could do min width 100 view width if you want. Um, the problem with that is that sometimes creates scroll bars because um, I don't know. I always have that issue with that. But I think if you don't set them in width, then it'll be fine. It'll already be the full width. Okay. Does anyone else have any like pressing CSS questions or questions with the homework or
So I just have one question about the homework. In the rubric, it says to customize style of navigation items, but there aren't any navigation items in our to-do list
oh,
yet.
okay.
So should we just make some dummy navigation, or should
I
we
I
ignore
assume they
that?
just I assume they have some instructions from like a previous version of the lesson that because sometimes they're always updating the curriculum. And so sometimes I assume they like update it without like fully making sure that none of it conflicts. So they probably just left that
Uh,
in. So
if you
let's see.
scroll down, it's under rubric. Yeah, right there. It says customize style of navigation items.
Oh, so we don't have a navigation. We don't have nav in here. So I would say ignore it.
I thought they just meant the buttons, but then it also says underneath customize input and button styles. But I just assumed, like you said, it was an issue.
And then I also have one more question. It says use media queries to make sure the application is responsive for all device sizes. Doesn't Flexbox also make it so that you don't have to use media queries? Because Flexbox kind of automatically moves things around on the screen depending on screen size.
Yeah, that's a good point. I pretty much rely on Flexbox instead of media queries. Um, so I think they want you using media queries because it's a good thing to know.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of times you can get away with not using media queries if you're using like Flexboxes and I mean even just default like HTML is like kind of responsive by default. Like even if we didn't have, let's say we have no HTML in here. I'm just gonna delete all that. Um, if I were to like, well, let's make everything bigger. Let's do everything font size
40.
40, 40 pixels. Perfect. Okay, so everything's really big. What happens if I shrink it down? Look at that. Things are automatically um, repositioning themselves. So HTML stuff is responsive by default in a way. There's a lot of ways that it is. And like the way that this is happening here is these elements are inline, and inline elements by default will wrap if they're uh, allowed to. If they don't have like a minimum, or if the parent container doesn't have like a minimum width set or anything. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of ways that like websites are responsive just by default and you don't have to do anything. But a good use case for a media query would be like, let's just roll with this big app. Let's make the H1 even bigger. Let's do uh, font size 1.3 rem, which if you don't use rems, rems are awesome because there's rems and ems, different units. One rem will be 16 pixels by default. And what it's really referring to is the root element. I don't know what M stands for. EM is going to be based on like the parent element's font size. REM is based on the root element's font size. And the root element, you can actually assign a font size by doing that. Root font size. And this is what I really should have done instead of this. Font size 18 rem. Oh, I mean 18 pixels. Sorry. So now if I change the root font size, the font size of everything else will change to 26. And we'll change it for everything. And then rem will scale based on this value. So if it's 1.5 rem, then when we change the root font size, then this will be automatically updated. It's basically a fraction of this size here. So if in the root font size by default is 16 pixels. So I like to use rem for everything because then if I want to change my font size, then I can. And one good use for that, and I'll show you how to use media queries using that technique. We could have our root font size like something really big, like 40. And then we could say, or let's have it even bigger. Let's have it like 60. So it's really big. And now when someone's on mobile, say we want it to be a little bit smaller. I could do an at media. Oh, I always forget how to write these. Media query. Screen and okay. Media, screen and min width. And I like to use there's a CSS library called Tailwind, and Tailwind actually has a set of breakpoints that they use, and I like to go based on theirs. So they have small, medium, large, XL, and 2XL as these specific media queries here. And so I kind of like to just use theirs. So what I would do is like media min width 64 or 640. This would be like for small. And then I'd just do that same for the different ones. And we don't have to do a bunch, but actually it'd probably just be easier to copy and paste this whole thing. Large is 1024. Extra large 1280, and then 2XL is 1536 pixels. Okay, so this is more media queries than you'd ever really need, but well, you might need, but we have a bunch here. Let's just go with like and remember they can be min width or max width. So if it's min width, then that means it's gonna be this is only gonna apply to the sizes under this amount. So it's like this and down, this and down, this and down. So if we apply one to, or wait, no, sorry, it's the opposite. This and up. So if I apply a style to here, if I do like body element, background color, this will apply to everything. So in all screen sizes, except for smaller than small, it'll apply that. Do they not have like extra small in here? Looks like they don't. Okay.
Wouldn't
Anyways,
max be the better way to go just because, up until that point and then quote unquote up until that point and then up until that point? I mean, I guess no matter what, it's just going to, once you put something in that new media between that position, it's going to take over, I guess.
yeah, so if you want them to cascade up or down, using the min, it cascades the style upwards, and then using max, it cascades them downwards, and it's based on preference. If it's based on min, then that is going to help you do what's called mobile first development, where you are designing for the mobile screen sizes first. Um, and then you go back, or actually, what you do is your default styles are going to be applied here without any media queries. And then once your first media query starts, that's where you start changing things for when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So there's this whole trend where, like, if I look up percentage of uh, website visitors on mobile versus web, internet traffic from mobile devices, let's see. Over 60% of website traffic comes from mobile devices. So there's this trend where people are basically realizing your website has to be good on mobile for the most part, because 60% of people are going to be seeing it uh, on their phone. So there's been this whole trend of people kind of adopting what's called mobile first development, where they design their website to look good on mobile. And they prioritize that even more than the desktop, which that's, from what we're used to, when we develop, we're developing for the desktop for the most part. That's what you think of when you're using your computer to develop. But and it depends on your website. Like, if your website is something like, I don't know, W3 Schools, which has a bunch of, like, answers to coding questions, this app is probably mostly used uh, in the browser, or in desktop view. Most people probably end up on this website through the desktop view, because the traffic, you can imagine it's mostly people who are, like, coding. And when you're coding, you're mostly not coding on your phone. Um, so it depends on your website, but a lot of websites are going to have more traffic um, from mobile. And so there's this trend of mobile first development. And part of that is you add media queries which have min width instead of max width, which means you do all of your styles, and then you go to that breakpoint and you go, okay, now we need to adjust things to work on larger screens. And then you go to the next breakpoint and say, now we need to. So let's get back to what is an actual good use case for media queries when you have Flexbox making everything easy. One reason would be changing, well, flex direction. I think that's the main biggest one. So let's imagine we have, like, a picture on the side here. And actually, instead of imagining it, I'll actually make a picture on the side here. So we have this section, which is our to-do container. Let's make another section, which is our hero image. Actually, let's just make it, or yeah, let's make it a section. Section, and we're going to have a class name of, or wait, we're using CSS modules, so we can do class name styles dot hero image as well, or hero image container. Let's call that one. And then inside here, I'll have an image. And then I'll pull an image from um, Unsplash. This is a website that has photos you can download. So what what do we let's get some audience participation. What do you all want an image of on my
Cat.
hero section? A cat.
I mean, it is still a cat site.
It's true. What are you thinking?
Oh,
This one?
it's such a cute one. I love it.
Oh, it's locked. This is
Oh
for
no.
Unsplash Plus.
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of cute cat pictures.
Okay, let's do this one. This looks like a good one.
Yeah, that one is cute too.
Okay, so I'll download it. Actually, instead of downloading it, I think I can just link to it. Let's see. Copy image address. I think that'll do it. Let's see. If I copy the image address and paste it. Yep. So this is actually a link to a file. So if we have a link that just is to an image file, then we can probably put that in the source here and it'll probably work. I got that right. Yep. Okay. So now we have this cat showing up. Let's change the size of it though. We're gonna have to adjust that. Alt, let's do cat, and then class name, let's do styles dot image or hero image. Hero image. So we have our hero image container and our hero image. And let's see. First, let's make our hero image smaller because that's it's way too big. Let's do width of 20 rem. Still probably too big. 10. Oh, it's not changing. Hero image. Oh, there we go. Oh, I had IMG before. What is this? Hero and oh yeah, it's image spelled out. Okay. Okay. So say on desktop, we want these side by side. This is the most common, like easy to use reason to use media queries. Say we want on desktop this image to be side by side with this to-do list. And then on mobile, we want it to be in a column. So what I would do is I would say this, I guess, let's see, main. We probably want a section for the entire. We probably want a section for the whole uh, hero section. And then these, instead of being sections here, these will be divs. And then this section will have a class name of, uh, hero container. Styles dot hero container or hero section. Okay, so am I getting, oh yeah, it's still showing up. Okay, so our hero section should be a flex box. So I'm going to say display flex, and then I'll be row by default. So it'll put these items side by side. And then on, let's center it. Let's do what we did where we say justify content. Justify content center. Cool. So now we have a hero section. It's kind of a weird hero section, but it works. We can add a cat, which is a funny idea for a hero section, but we got it. We're doing it. Now on mobile screens aren't very good with having a lot of width. On a mobile screen, if you have a page that's too wide, it just is bad. And so what we can do is we can say, well, let's have on mobile, and remember we're doing mobile first. So we're gonna say on our actual base styles here, let's design them to work on mobile. So let's say the flex direction here, flex direction is gonna be column. And that works way better on mobile, right? And then on a desktop view, we want these things to be side by side. So let's see which breakpoint we would want for that to happen. So let's, and we want to change this. So we want to do hero section, and then we just want to change the flex direction when it's at a certain width. And we can actually test to see what kind of width we would want by opening up our dev tools. We can click on this little guy down here, which it allows you to test your responsiveness by sliding this out. So let's go right there, or right there. That's probably around where we want these things to be side by side. So let's look for a breakpoint that's around that width. And that width we can see is around 1540, or maybe a little smaller. Let's see what kind of media queries around there.
Okay.
Oh, Siri showing up uninvited. Okay, let's do the XL. Let's do the XL one. So when it's at 1280, which is right there-ish, that's around where it should go. The hero section should have a flex direction of row. And I can just delete the other media queries. We're not using them for now. Okay, let's try it out. Here we go. So now we have a flex box that's centering everything. And then when you go to a wider screen, the media query kicks in and says, I want to change this flex direction to row. So these items are side by side. And then we could even have it so we can see nothing's centered in here. So what we could do is say, we don't want justify content in this one. We want align items. Align items center. And then for this one, we would want justify content. So let's try that. There we go. So, and that's pretty typical of a website with a hero section. I could even show you an example. Let's just find a random website that has a hero section. And it'll most likely have something like that. This is a whole bunch of components here. This website, it has like Tailwind pre-built React components for you, so you can see. So I'll sometimes refer to this if I want to see like different sections. They have like blocks, hero sections. So we can see examples of different hero sections. Okay, so this is a typical layout of a hero section. They have these, they have the, this would be the hero title text, the hero subtext, This would be the call to action, and then this would be like a secondary call to action. And then this is the hero image. This is a very typical layout of a hero section. And let's go desktop view and then mobile view. Oh, wait. Why can't I scroll on that? I'd think it would allow me to scroll, but it doesn't. But we can imagine, oh, wait, it's just going away. Okay. So they're just hiding their hero image. Their hero image isn't important enough to where mobile doesn't need it. But we could see other ones. Yeah. So this one, they change the flex box to be a row on mobile. And then even this thing. So this form, these things are still side by side. And then you go even smaller, and now everything's aligned top to bottom. So as you think more like what works well on a mobile phone, things need to be aligned top to bottom. And on a desktop view, you can have a lot more things side to side. And so changing flex boxes to be column instead of row on a smaller screen is a great way to make your website more responsive. You could even just hide elements if they're not important enough on mobile. Okay.
Can we also align the list items? The buttons, the same way?
Yep. Yep. Let's do that. Okay. So let's actually make it look good. How about just the last part will be actually making things look good. So I'd say cats should be centered, right? And so, oh, cats is inside this div. Which is this to-do container here. So the to-do container itself, let's see, it has this heading, it has the cat form, the cat list. Okay, it has a bunch of things that should probably just always be on like lined up on top of each other, which they already are because they're there are block level elements, like an H1 is a block level element. So there's a couple different ways to do it. One is we could say to-do container. Let's take the to-do container and we could make it display flex. And then the flex direction to be column. Oh, okay. So I must have these things in their own separate containers too. Yeah, I have a form, and then the form has those things, and then each of these in the UL, I have the, okay, list elements. Okay. So if I want, so that's actually not going to do anything, having this to-do container. One thing that could do is we could just have it space out the items. If I wanted to do like a gap, could space out some of the items, but we don't really need that. I'm gonna say what we want is this form right here needs to either be a flex box that aligns these items like that. Well, there's a few different ways to align items on top of each other rather than side by side. And maybe I'll even make like a note. How to place items vertically instead of horizontally. So one method is by using a flexbox. Flexbox with flex direction set to column. So we could do that by taking this form here and making a flexbox and setting the flex direction to column. So I'll do that for that one. That's a good way to do it. I really like using flexboxes, so I pretty much use them for everything. So on this add cat form, actually, this is a custom component, so I'm going to go into it and find the form right here and say this form should have a class name of, let's do a CSS module for it, and let's do styles.form, like that. And then we're actually going to need to make, I'll make a separate CSS module for that. I'll make cat form dot module dot CSS. And then I'll do, let's see, we have styles.form. So I'll do dot form. And I'll just do a background color. This is something I always do. I just set the background color to some random color when I add a new CSS file or I'm trying to target a specific element. It's just a way to check that your styles are actually going to be applied. So we have this add cat form dot module. So I'll add that by saying import styles from dot slash cat form, sorry, cat form dot module dot CSS. And let's see if it worked. Yep. So I have the background color set to red, so we know that it linked correctly. So now that we selected that form here in our add cat form, we don't want the background color to be red. What we actually want is to align the items inside using a column. So I'm going to do display flex and then flex direction column. And now they're aligned on top of each other, which is great. Now, why are these elements so wide now? Well, flexboxes sometimes mess with the width of things. Sometimes they like stretch items out. And so one way to solve that is we can use, this one would be align items. So we could do align items flex start. And that'll make them back to their normal width because they're not like stretching out. I think we can actually, if we go in here, let's go into the actual dev tools and check out the different options there. So we can do the flex for that. Let's look at in our styles thing, flex. Let's try these different things out. So we have flex direction column, align items, so we can have center, which looks like that. And then stretch. I think it's stretch by default. I think that's why they do that. Let's do center. Let's do align items center for that. So align items. When you play around with your CSS and dev tools like that, by the way, it doesn't save it in your actual code. If you reload your page, then it resets. Let's align this header too. I go into app.module.css, h1. Actually, let's just add a text align on everything. to center. And that will center all of our text by default. Okay, then we probably want this input to be a little bigger. So I'll do input, selector for it, add cat form. I have an input with label element, so I'll go into that. And we're going to actually input with label. Class name. Using CSS modules, I don't know. I'm not that used to it, so I might not be using it in the best possible way. Input module .css. Let me go back to where we have that. And then I want to import this. Import styles from input.module.css. Okay, so now we can go to here and we can change the input. We could do width equals 100%. And then maybe max width equals 10 rem, or maybe 8, 6. Oh, 60. Whoops. Okay, yeah, 6. That's probably good. Let's do a min height. I like using max and mins instead of actually setting things to be an exact value. We could probably set height to, you definitely don't want to set widths to be exact that often, but for heights, it's more okay to do that. We could do height 2 rem, 1 rem. Actually, if the root font size is, yeah, we probably want to do like 1.4 rem. Because if we type in here, oh, the actual text size is not going to be 1. Okay. Text or font size 1 rem. Okay. We're doing everything big today. If you want to make an input look actually good, you need padding. 0.2 rem, let's try. And then you want rounded border, radius. This is how you get rounded corners. Let's do 0.4 rem. Or maybe 0.8. And the padding needs to be bigger. And then maybe let's have the width bigger. This is a really large element. Everything on our page is big right now. Okay. Is, yeah, very large, but okay. Let's make this button bigger. Actually, I feel like I'm kind of just going on a tangent. Am I helping? Does anyone have any other good questions to ask? should I continue with what I'm doing or?
I think, yeah. Also, just my question was related to the align the remove buttons. Like,
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. So we would go to um, the cat list item, which for you, this would be a to-do list item. And I can just do inline styles for this. Style equals, and then you could do, well, first we want to get rid of the bullet points, which, here, let me delete that. We want to get rid of those bullet points, which would be on the cat list element. Yeah, cat list element. This UL, we could do styles and then what is it?
List style type, I think. I think you would say to list style type none.
List style type. Yep. Yep. None. There you go. So that's a CSS property. And I'm doing an inline style right now, but that's a CSS property that would look like if you wanted on a UL, it would look like list style. You could do list style none or list style type to be more specific. List style is actually going to refer to a few different properties. List style type, list style position, and list style image, but list style type, none. So that gets rid of those dots. And then if you want to have the remove buttons, let's see, did you want them underneath or side by side or
un
placed like
underneath, yeah, we can try.
underneath? So I'd go to my cat list item, I'd go style equals, and I could do some inline styles. Actually, I'll show you a different way of doing styles too. I'll do style equals, or style equals, and then I'll do li style, but then I'll make an element here. Const li style equals, and then it's going to be an object that has some styles in it. And so I could do like, oh wait, can get rid of those. Display flex. And then I'm setting that object to be the style property. So that's another way of doing styles inline, is you can make an object that has the styles themselves separately like this. And then we could do flex direction. Column. And then the remove buttons are underneath. If the buttons are too big like that,
Oh, sorry. Can you make it side by side? I'm
side by
sorry.
side.
I bet, yeah. I just mean the
Yeah,
remove
sure.
buttons underneath to each other. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
you want them
yeah,
aligned.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. Okay. Yep. So the way that I would do that is I would have, and I want to stop doing my styles like that because that's tough. I'm going to make a CSS module. Um, style, or wait, class name, um, styles dot uh, cat list item. Let's just call it that. I can import styles from dot slash cat list item dot module dot css. And now I need to make this file. And then let's see. I called that cat list item. So cat list item. And so I would make it have a width that's a defined width. And it's either the full width of the container. So I do like min width 100% of the container. Oh, is it not doing it? Cat list item, cat list item. Okay, it is, but okay, so it is the max width, but the text being centered might be doing that. Let's see. Well, I think what I want to do is I would say display flex. And then I would set the items to be as far apart as they can be, so that the remove button is all the way on the other side. So I could do or justify content. And I do space between. And then I would make each cat list item have like a margin beneath it. Margin bottom of a little bit. Let's do a little more. Let's have the remove button be a little bit
Thank
like
you.
wider. Yeah.
CSS is, I really struggled with CSS this week, and it's annoying.
I know. It takes a long time to learn. It's definitely like it can get tedious. Okay. So this I'm gonna have this be a delete button. And I'm gonna set a min width to 4rem or 3. Anyways, I did all sorts of crazy stuff, so our app is still looking really bad, but um, does anyone else have any other thoughts, questions?
It was really helpful. Thank you.
That's good.
I'm not super familiar with CSS, so the trial and error all the time was really time consuming for me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have some advice for CSS. There's this person on YouTube who um, he has awesome videos to help you with CSS stuff. Um,
Is it Kevin Powell by any chance?
yes. Who said that?
Oh, I did. That's where I learned like all my CSS. So
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Kevin Powell is amazing. He makes the best, he's like a CSS wizard. And so he has some awesome playlists that you can watch on like just everything CSS. He's really great. So this is a resource that you should definitely know about is him. And I'll put that in the chat. There's another place to learn just like web design stuff, which is this guy Flux Academy. Let's see. Flux Academy web design. This guy, he has an awesome course on web design. I watched this one, this Web Design 101 free course here. And he has just the most amazing course on, and he doesn't teach you any CSS. He teaches you web design theory, and he uses mostly Figma and then this program called Webflow. So he doesn't actually code. Well, he probably knows how, but he is mostly just going over like concepts of web design that you can apply to CSS stuff. So he has that, and then he also has this new one that just came out or 7 months ago. But I haven't watched this one, but I assume this is the more recent version of that same thing. So if you just look up, and I think if you look up just like web design course, it's probably going to be the first thing that comes up. That's how I found it. Yeah. Second thing that comes up. So he is really great. But again, not for CSS specifically. Keeps playing. Yeah, those are some good ways to learn design. And then also, I was recently learning Webflow, which this is a website that it's kind of like Wix or Squarespace or WordPress. It's one of those sites that allows you to create a website without coding. And it basically uses all the CSS stuff, like all the same things that are in CSS, but you like point and click to do stuff. And it's not going to help, like, basically what it does is it shows you what all the CSS properties actually do because they're buttons that you can press and play around with. And they have a whole series of videos that I watched recently that are super amazing. Webflow. Let's do Webflow docs. Oh, oh, we need Webflow tutorials. Design lessons, maybe that's it. Potentially. Courses. There's like a series of courses that they have you do in a specific order. And I can't find exactly where, but uh, yeah, like courses like this, they have all these videos learning about, you're not learning the actual CSS properties themselves for the most part. Like you kind of are, but you're not writing them in code. You're just learning like concepts that help you. I don't know. I learned a lot from Webflow, and so that's a resource there. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. How's everyone else feeling? I could finish making this website look good. The only caveat is I'm not going to be able to use CSS modules very quickly because I'm not very good with them. But if I just use normal, what I'm used to CSS, I could probably get it done pretty quick. How about if you feel like sticking around, I'll spend a little bit just trying to make this website look good in the way that I would.
I had something in my styling that I wanted to go over if it was possible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to do that. Do you want to screen share?
Yes, let me get that sorted. Um, I went through the styling, but when I hover over my add button, some of the elements shift a little bit, and I'm not understanding where that's coming from.
Okay.
I'm also not very good at using Zoom here.
Oh, that's fine. So if you want to share it, yeah, you can. Yep, there you go. Nice. Hey, that looks great.
Thank you. So um, it's just when I'm doing the add button, there's like a little shift in the, I think, container or just like the
Yep.
upper section of the to-do list. And I don't know where that hover effect is coming from.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Um, I've seen stuff like that before, and it a lot of times it's just like a single pixel. It could be that there's a border that appears when you hover and it's not there when you don't. Um, if I could see your CSS, then I could probably figure it out.
Do you want me to do it through like the dev tools or like the actual code itself?
We could just do your dev tools.
Oh, sorry. 750. Oh, I don't know what it's doing. Where should I?
So yeah, what I'd like to see is if there's any elements, or basically I want to see what happened, like if you could find where the selector for that button is. Um, I want to see if there's the pseudo selector for hover, um, what that is up to. Um, if you go on the side and then scroll down, okay. If you click on the hover thing, it's like up at the top of that window, there's a little thing that says hover or HOV.
uh, Sorry, where is it?
Yeah, just um it,
Oh, right here.
yep, there you go. Okay, so if you that will allow you to emulate like mouse interactions over an element. So if you click on the hover thing, okay. So now we can see styles that are applied when there's a hover over it. So if you scroll back up in there and maybe click away so you can close out the hover menu,
Click away.
just anywhere. Or wait, you might need to click like in the top menu bar where that hover thing is. It's
Oh,
just in a
this one.
blank space. Or maybe click, yeah, that worked. Okay, so we have button, hover, and then you have a border. So what I'm guessing is that that button doesn't have a border when you're not hovering, and then when you hover, it adds a border.
Oh, okay.
And so the border will actually increase the width of the button, and then everything shifts a little bit.
Okay, okay.
And so what you can do is you can have a border that doesn't have a color, on the button just always, or you can set the border to be inset. That's probably a better way to do it. So if you go to your actual code, I can help you fix that if you want. Or I could help you fix it in the actual DevTools. What you'd want to do is have the border be inset, or you have it so that it just always has an invisible border, and then you oh wait,
Is
it
it
does have a
this
2
one?
pixel. Okay.
That's what I'm thinking
So
when you
what you should probably do is take that 2 pixels in solid thing and make sure that your border on your on the hover thing is also 2 pixels in solid. So that should also be 2 pixels in solid. Yeah.
If I exit this, would the applied style still stay
It
or?
would stay, yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much.
Of course. I've ran into that before. So that's one of those things that you just like I've done a lot of CSS stuff. So
Thank you for
that. Yeah.
helping solve that.
Your congrats on this site. It looks great. Good job with
Thank
that.
you.
It looks really good.
Right, okay. Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay, how's everyone else doing? Good. Okay. I'm getting tired and hungry, so I'm probably gonna get going. End out the lesson here.
All right, thanks for everything, Rio.
Yeah, of course. Sorry it was kind of lackluster today. I hope that you all still got something out of it.
Oh, not at all. It was great.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yep.
Yes, thank you for everything.
Yeah, of course.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you next week. Enjoy your lunch.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Okay. I want to do just a quick, like a bonus thing for this lesson because I just feel like I was unorganized during it, and I'd like to get more progress done with this app. And I really like CSS, so I figured I might as well go a little deeper and actually try to make this app look good. So I'm gonna start from no CSS at all, and yeah, try to get it looking good quickly and according to the best practices that I know. And I'm not going to be using CSS modules. I'm just going to be using the way that I am used to, just because that's what I'm used to. I just import a CSS file and then I style it like that. So yeah, I'll just get into it. So the first thing that I would do with any blank CSS file or any project starting off is I would do a star selector, which selects anything or everything, and then I would set the margin and padding on everything to 0. So margin 0, padding 0. So this is like a reset, and we could call this a CSS reset is what we'd call this. And then I'd also do box sizing, border box. What that does is it makes the width and height of an element account for the border and padding, so that borders and padding isn't added on top of the height and width that you include. It's part of that. It just makes, this is a pretty typical thing that people will set, and it makes doing CSS a little more intuitive. Then I would do some styles to the root selector. So the root selector applies to the base level HTML element. So there's literally a tag called HTML, and that's your base element. And so any styles we apply here apply to that root element. And so here I might set the font size, which this will propagate to all the other tags. So I could say font size, and I might, for this app, I might just do 20 pixels. We don't have very much going on with this app, so I might as well make the font a little bit bigger. I could even make it 24, let's say. And then another thing I might do in here is use CSS variables. CSS variables are exactly what they sound like. Well, I don't think they're technically called variables. I think they're called CSS custom properties, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so they're also called variables. They look like this, and I usually set them in my root. Basically, it allows you to come up with any name you want. So I'll show you how it would look like. Background color. That's what I'm calling it. It can be anything you want. It could be blah, blah, but we're going with background color. And now I can set the background color, and then anywhere in my app or anywhere else in my CSS, I can refer to the same color. So let's start with black. Actually, we would need to apply it to actually see it. So let's apply it to the body element. So the way to apply a CSS variable or refer to it is by using the var keyword. So I'm going to go background color, var, and then it's almost like a function, and you pass in the name of that variable. So now this variable is actually controlling what the background color here is. And I don't actually want it black. I want it white. Let's just go default. It's white. And then you can also go text color. Text color, dark, or there isn't a CSS property called text color, it's just color. And I'm going to do var text color. And what that does is if you use CSS variables, it makes it so that you can refer to all of your colors in one element. So that throughout your app you can be referring to these colors, but then when you want to change them, you can just go and change them all in one place here. So I know we didn't change anything with that, but let's do, we could do like a primary color. We could do like a foreground primary. Foreground primary. Let's go with red by default, but then sometimes I'll just put a color in there just to get this color selector showing up, and then I'll pick one. So let's say the foreground, or actually let's do this as a background primary. I'm thinking this will be like a button color. I could set it to like that. Okay. So now let's get into actually, this is setting up some kind of basic just setup stuff. Let's actually get to what we want to get to, which is I want to start by centering all this stuff in the page. So let's look at our app.jsx. We have a main element, that has pretty much our whole app in it. So I'm going to do a selector for main. Remember, the body is like the root of all the elements. The main could have, you could have a main and then you could have like everything, most of the content in your website, but then you might also have a footer, which is outside main, and then a header, which is outside main. But for this app, all we have is a main as our root element. And so the main element, I'm going to set the margin to auto, which will, that will center the main element as long as the main element has a max width. Because as of right now, the main element is going to be the full width. But if I set a max width to, let's say, 30 rem, let's try that. Now, should be centered. Oh, okay. It is centered, but none of the content inside it is centered. And we can test that by looking at the background color. Just set it temporarily. So the background color of this shows us that the main element, this red part, is actually centered in the page, which is what we want. And since, so this is how we center it. We set margin to auto and then give it a width. But margin auto is really what's doing it. And you can see, because if I go to our CSS styles here, the margin is going to increase when I increase the width of the page. And so margin left and margin right are really what's centering it in the left and right dimensions. Or it's a single dimension, the X dimension. So that's how we're centering this. You could also center it with a flexbox, and we'll be centering other elements with a flexbox, but I'll get there. I don't want this to be margin red. I'm gonna leave, or color red. I'm gonna leave it having a color just temporarily so that I can like place it right, so I know where the main is. So for this app, I think what I want is I just want to move this whole cat list down a decent amount on the page. So I'll just do like a margin top of like 10 rem. And for some reason that's not doing anything. Oh, because I'm setting margin to auto underneath, which overrides that. This is setting everything to auto. So if I move this down now, it'll do that. So that looks good. I could set it to even a little less, maybe 8. Okay, now I can get rid of the background color. We don't need that. Okay, what else do we want to do? Well, I'd say we want this cat's heading to be centered. So I can just select it with the H1. And I'm going to say text align center. That's good. Okay, now what else is going on here? Well, we have this form for adding a cat. And then we have this unordered list here. The unordered list has these little bullet points, which I don't think look too good. So I'm going to get rid of those. The way you get rid of bullet points is they're on a UL element. And you say list style type none. That gets rid of those bullet points. Now, there isn't any spacing between the add a cat form and these list elements. And there's no like background color to separate them. Really, it just looks like a little blob of all the same stuff here. So we really want to separate these out and make them a little more interesting. So let's first deal with this form element. So I'm going to do form. And what do I want to have happen? Well, I would like add a cat to appear above the input. So the label there should appear above the input. And then the button, well, I guess the button and the input could appear side by side. How about? And then the labels in the center above all of them. So to achieve that, we could do a flex box. That's actually that's probably the easiest way. I'll do a flex box. So let's find out where that cat form is, and we have a form element. We have our input with label, which this is going to have some JSX inside of it that we're actually going to potentially want to refer to. So I'd say to make the label appear above everything, let's go to our label, and if I set the label, oh wait, I was going to solve this with a flex box. Let's solve it with a flex box. Or wait, the input and the label are in the same element. Okay, so that way wouldn't really work that well. So let's set the label to have display block, which an element in CSS display. Go to W3 Schools. This is really important in learning CSS. Is there's these different displays that an element can have. It can be inline, block. I never see that. The main ones to know are inline, block, and then like flex and grid, and also inline block. So we can probably see demos of all of these. I would assume they have one here. Let's try the demo. Yep. Okay, this is good. So display inline makes everything, if the display property on an item is inline, then it won't take up the full width of the page, and so items can go side by side. So inline, items can go side by side. Block, items automatically take up the full width of the page, so they have to go stacked on top of each other. And so we're talking about these boxes here are still inline, but the actual containers, the blue containers, are going from inline to block. Inline block, the difference between inline and inline block, even though they look about the same, inline block is just, it allows you to make elements inline, but you can still affect their width and height properties by specifying them. So any element can have a width and height property. If it's inline, you can't change the width and height of the element just by using the width and height properties. With inline block, you can. Flex, we're going to get to flex if you haven't seen it. So those are the main important ones. Inline, side by side. Block makes elements on top of each other because they take up the full width. Inline block, it's just like inline, except you can still tell it the width and height that it should be. And then flex is a whole thing. Okay, so what we want is to make this a block element, so it takes up the full width of its container, which is this form container. If it takes up the full width, then this input and button are going to be forced to go underneath it. So I'll show you that. Display block. There you go. So now this label is going to be on top of these other two things beneath it. And I might as well center the text there too. So text align. Oh. Center. And let's make this form actually, we can use a background color for the form. How about, let's do a BG. Okay, so this was a simple version of how I would do background and foreground colors. The way that I might actually do it in real life is I would go BG light 1, and then I might have BG light 2, BG light 3. So let's do BG light 1 and BG light 2. And BG light 2 is going to be just a little bit darker. So I'll add those as needed. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this form have a background color of BG light 2. So it gives it just a little bit of separation, maybe a little bit darker. There we go. And then on the form, I'm going to have it be separated out from the title a little bit. And so what I could do is I could either push it down from using the title element, so like add a margin bottom on this H1, or I could add a margin top on the form itself. Sometimes I like to be consistent with it. So let's have all the elements that are going to be separated vertically apart from each other. Let's have them all pushing each other down using margin bottom. Actually, I already broke that, that rule by adding a margin top to the main element. But let's say the main is an exception. Everything else needs to have a margin bottom if it wants to push elements beneath it. So I'll do margin bottom on the H1. And I'll do 1 rem. And then I'll add a 1 rem margin bottom to the form as well. So then that separates this unordered list, the cats. Now, when you have a thing with background colors, I typically like to have a border radius on them. So I'm going to do border radius, and we could do like 0.4 rem. So that rounds the borders, rounds the edges. It doesn't need to have actual explicit borders to have a border radius. It's just there, which is good. Let's have this add a cat text be a little bit, let's have the color be a little bit less dark. Or we could do it on the main title. Let's do it on the main title. Let's make it a little more bold and a little less dark. So I'm going to do, on this H1, I'm going to do font width, or font weight, sorry. And I'm going to pick, so the way it goes is 100 through 900, 900 being the boldest, 100 being the lightest. You can also use these keywords, light, bold, bolder, lighter. I'm going to use, well, we could use the keywords. Let's go bold. Bolder. Doesn't seem to be making a difference. Okay, it could be that this font doesn't, I think we're just using the default font, which is Times New Roman, I think. I'm not sure why the font weight wouldn't be changing, so let's see. Times New Roman. Okay. Not working, but I'm just gonna ignore that for now. We could do a font fam. Let's change the font family. Let's have this not be font or Times New Roman. Let's have it be Roboto. I like Roboto. There should be, you should typically have a fallback font. So let's do Roboto and then like Arial, I think. I think we can do that, right? Oh wait, we do Roboto, Arial, and then these are like named fonts, and then at the end you can do like a type of font that your computer will just pick whichever works, which would be sans serif. Oh, Arial, Helvetica, sans serif. We could do something like that. Roboto, Arial. Does Roboto have to be? Honestly, I don't know enough about this. Sure, looks good. And then the font weight, let's try seeing if that's working. No. I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have this, we want this input to be centered in this button in the form. So let's see. How can we center it? We can make the form actually have a display of flex column so that it aligns these things on top of each other. Oh, but then it would align, it would put, we wouldn't be able to get these two things side by side like that. Oh. Okay. Let's make, this is going to be a funny one. Let's give the input a margin left of auto, and then this button a margin right of auto, which should shift these things into the middle. So I'm going to go to select this button specifically instead of these buttons. I'm going to do form button. And what that does is it grabs any direct descendants of the form that are also a button. And I'm going to say margin right auto. That won't do anything, but then if we do form input, and we do margin left auto, it doesn't center it. I don't know why. Let's see. I'm not doing the best job of teaching this. Okay, so coming back to this, I had to kind of look at what's the best strategy here. We're going to make the form a grid, and we're going to use grid template areas, which allow you to define different parts of the grid using keywords or words that you define here. So you get to call them whatever you want, and you basically define the columns, the rows, and then the areas are a named version of those rows, and then each item you get to place in a specific grid area like that. So we're gonna have grid template columns, and we're gonna have an area on top that the whole first row is just going to be taken up by the input label. And then the button and the input are going to be taking up the middle or the bottom row. It's just going to be 2 rows. So 2 rows, 2 columns. Yeah. So we're going to do grid template rows, and we're just going to do auto and auto, I think. Or maybe we can just do auto. Let's just do auto. Grid template columns. And we're going to have that be 2 columns, which are each 1 fraction. So we're going to do 1 FR, 1 FR. Then we're going to do grid area. And the grid template areas, sorry. Grid template areas. And what that's going to look like is label. I can actually indent this like that. We're going to do label. Do you do a comma? Label? Oh no, it's, okay, so it's all on the same row. There's no commas separating them or anything. Interesting. Okay. We're doing label, label. And then we're going to do another one that is or input and then button. So the whole top row is going to get taken up by the label, and then the input is going to be on the bottom row left column, or the input, and then the button is going to be bottom row right column. So then this label, I can say grid area, and I can call that label. And we'll just see if this is working now. Doesn't have to be display block anymore. I can click on that to see the grid now. So yeah, we have this label, and then we have the input, and we have button. So the input and button look like they're already in the same, they're in the places that they should be. That's just by chance, by the order that they're in. But let's make sure that they are by saying form input grid area input. And then the button should be in the grid area button. Cool. So that, now we're using the grid. And now what I can do is I can actually limit the size of these things, and I should be able to place them in the centers of where they're at. So if I limit the width of this input, I could say input max width 8 rem. Yep. But it's not placed in the center, and so I can do place self. I think. Justify self center. Okay, I'm not doing that right, clearly. Align. No. There's a way to center an item in the grid, but let's just try doing it on the parent. Basically, an element, you can specify the placement of an element on the element itself, the child in the grid, or you can place it using the parent, which is the parent container that has the grid itself in it. And so I'm going to do it on, let's do it on the parent. Let's say justify items center, and then align items center on the form itself. So I'm going to do justify items center. Cool. Align, which align items center, I don't think, sorry, align items center. I don't think that'll do anything. Align. There we go. It's not going to do anything because the containers, the grid container itself is only as big as these actual elements. So there's no like wiggle room in the up and down range for them to go. But if the grid, if the form itself had a height, then that would take effect. So let's actually do that. Let's say the form itself has a, let's do a min height of like 10 rem. So now you can see align items will actually be, yeah. So that's them being stretched, and now they're not. Instead of having this be 10, let's have it be something like 8 maybe, or 6. Now, actually, what I probably want is I'm going to have justify self on this label. I'm going to have it justified to the right, and then maybe it's place self. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Place self. Align self and justify self. Okay. So it looks like what we want is justify self. Oh, so I was probably just using the wrong. Okay. So the input should be justify self end, right? Because it should be pushed towards the button. This should be pushed to the edge over here. So it should be justify self's end. Oh, not the label, the input. There we go. And then the button should be justify self start. There we go. Okay. It was overly complicated because the input, or the label here, and the input are actually in the same React element because of the way Code the Dream wanted us to do it. Otherwise, I would have put this, or I would have these two things in a div together, and then it would be easier to place everything in a column-wise flexbox and have these things still side by side. We're using a grid, which is kind of fun. Okay. We actually don't want these things quite pushed together like that, and so we can actually add a gap. We can add a row gap and a column gap in between items in the grid. And so we can do row gap 1 rem, and then you can also do column gap. Column gap 1 rem. We probably don't need the row gap because, well, actually, let's, instead of having a height for everything, let's not have a min height for that. And let's just have a row gap to space everything out, and then let's have padding around everything. So I'll do a padding on the form. Padding of, we can do 1 rem. Okay, it's starting to look better. Now let's add I guess we want this input to be a little bit bigger. Maybe we want the column gap to be a little bit smaller. Let's do like 0.2 rem. Let's have it pretty small. Okay, now I want the button and the input to both be bigger. I think I want them to be bigger, but I want them the same height. So I'm going to do a selector for both of them. Form button and form input. Form button, comma, form input, like that. This should select both of them, and maybe I'll put the selector up here. And if I specify a min height of like 1.8 rem, they're a little bigger. And then I can do a I'll do a padding in the input, or I'll do a border radius on both of these. But instead of having a border radius that's on all edges, I'm going to have a border radius that's actually just on the left side of the input and then just on the right side of the button. I'm also going to make the button have a min width. Button has a min width of, let's say, sure, we can do 8 rem, and then I'll want this, the form input. What happens if I get rid of that? Okay, so this is not altering the width of the button or the input. The input should have a min width of, let's say, 16 rem. So it's pretty big. Oh, but it won't look like it's centered because okay, I want this to be smaller then, so 12 rem. And this actually isn't going to look centered unless these things are the same width. So I'll do 8. That works. Cool. Your cat name just has to be short for the input to still work. And for the input, I want to do a border radius just on the left borders that round it. So border radius, but I don't want just border radius. I want border top left radius to be 0.5 rem. Border bottom radius to be 0.5 rem. That's cool. Let's do a padding. So maybe the min height will be a little bit smaller, but then I'll have a padding. So I'll do min height is 1.4 and then a padding. I think I just need a padding left. Or if I just do a padding left, then I actually can keep with this min height. Let's just do a padding on all sides. Padding is equal to 0.4 rem. And we're going to want the same padding on the button too, so I might as well just do that to keep it consistent. The border itself, let's adjust the border itself. Actually, let's make the border color for both of these the same, and for the button and the input. But see how I did this border left and border right radius on the input? Let's do the opposite for the button, so that they look like they're kind of part of the same rounded component together. So border top, well, we want to replace left with right here. And this could be a good case for having a CSS variable. So I could put it right here. I could do, because it's only in the scope of the form and the input, I could do like border radius of 0.5 rem. And then if I ever want to change it, I don't have to change it on all these things at once. Even though with my editor being able to do the multi-cursor thing, it's not really much of an issue. But this way I can change it right here to 0.2 or whatever, and it changes it for all those. And then we probably want the border itself to be 1 pixel solid. Let's have it gray. Gray for now. We can adjust this as needed. I think we could probably have a little bit less space between these, which the space is added in the form as a row gap. Could do 1 rem. That looks a little better. Okay. So okay, so now let's focus on these list items here, these cat list items. So we probably want the group of the list items to be defining the width. We want the width of this group that they're in. Oh, I think it is. Okay, that's perfect. So this UL is the same width as this form, probably determined by this main component here. Yep, which is good. Okay, so what do we want for these? Well, let's give them a background color, and we could do like a separate, let's do BG light 3. Oh, actually, before I apply that, let's make this add cat button have the BG primary color. So I'm going to do background color here. BG color is going to be var BG primary. Okay. And we can also do cursor pointer, which makes it so your mouse turns into the little pointer when you hover over it. And that looks a little bit too dark, so I'm going to lighten that up. Looks better. The text in that button looks a little small. I think the text in the input will end up being small too. I think the text everywhere is a little smaller than it needs to be. So let's go up. The nice thing is we're using rem everywhere, so if I change the font size up, it'll change everything, all my fonts, and anything that's defined using rem, which I use rem for pretty much everything, so everything will scale up. So let's do like 28. That looks good. That does make the margin top a little too big, so I'm going to bump that down to like 7 rem, maybe 6. Okay. I'm thinking this add a cat text in the button is still too small, so I'm going to say text. Is it? No, I'm spacing. It's font size, right? Font size, yep. Okay. Font size is going to be, let's have it based on rem. Let's do 1.4 rem. 1.4 rem. Oh, that's much too big. Okay. So somehow it's not 1 rem by default, which it should be, but it's not. I do like it bigger. That does make the button itself become bigger, which I think I'm fine with. But if we are going to have that, we want the input to be the same size. So let's actually pull the height of these elements out into their own variable. We could do a little height property here. Actually, let's not. Let's just have the we just need to make the font size equal in them. I think that'll do it. Yeah, that does it. Okay. And then I can make the input width a little smaller. 6, how about? Doesn't seem to be changing it. Shoot, maybe I'll just set the width. Yeah. Okay. I think on both of these things I'll just set the width. I'll set it in here. Width is, let's go with 6 rem. 8. 10. Perfect. Okay, let's get these elements inside looking a little bit, or these list item elements looking a little better. So what we're going to do is, let's first add a background color. So I'm going to do li bg color. I'm going to use that variable, which is bg light 3. I'm going to give it a margin bottom of 1 rem. They should have a padding of, let's say, 0.5 rem. Looking better. Let's do a border radius, and we could do the same border radius as we have here. In fact, we could do the same border radius on everything. I'll pull this border radius out to be up here in our root, and now everything will use the same border radius. But then I just want to make sure, I'll do a multi-select and make sure that anywhere where I have border radius, I'm referring to that one, which right here I'm not. So I'm going to do border radius is going to be var border radius. Okay. And then this li is going to have a border radius of var dash dash border radius. Cool. Okay, now the remove buttons, they look bad, and they're also they should be on the other side. They should be pushed to the other side of these LIs. So let's make the LI a flexbox, and then let's justify the content with space between, so that the space between these elements is maximized, so that the button is pushed all the way to the side. That's one way to do that. So I could go display flex, and then I could do justify content, space between. Okay, that pushes these buttons out to the side. I guess really the main last part would be making these buttons look a little better. So I'm going to do li button to select the buttons. And normally in my CSS I might actually like use a couple more like for things like this, I might put a class name on the button itself in the actual JSX. But for such a small app, and since we're just focusing on the CSS styles, I think this is a little easier. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So this button, I actually want this button and this button to have some things in common, but not enough to where I want to make a multi-selector. I'll just make the background color be BG primary, so that it's also blue like that. And maybe I'll make the same border, or the same border. So if that's the case, then I might make this border into its own variable, or I can do a selector with all three of these elements that sets it. I'll do a selector with all three of the elements. So I'll say form input, form button, and li button. So that's a selector for this input, that button, and these buttons. And just on that one, I'm going to have this border, and I can take it off of that. So now they all have the same border. And then I probably want padding on these buttons. Padding of, let's say, 0.5 rem. That's increasing the height of these list items, which is fine, but we're going to want to make sure that the text here still stays centered. Oh, and the text itself is not actually in its own HTML element. I think I know how to solve that. We'll get there when we get there. For right now, I'm just going to add a border radius to these remove buttons here. And I'm just going to have it be the same border radius that we have as a CSS variable. So I'm going to do border radius is a variable border radius. Cool. And now that I'm thinking about it, let's have the remove buttons be red, right? So I could do a different variable for red. Background color, BG. Let's not do primary, let's do, well, the way that they would do it in Bootstrap, which Bootstrap is another, Bootstrap. This is a popular library for CSS. And they have, let's see. They have some colors. The way they do their colors, let's look at their button. Oh, buttons. So their buttons can have different types on them, and these are the different types. So they have a type for danger, and danger is red. So they have primary, secondary, success, danger. So we might as well just borrow from that. Let's do danger. Let's call this danger. BG danger. And then we need to make a variable for it. BG danger. And let's have our BG danger be red. Something like that. Let's try it out. I think that looks good. Just get it looking a little nicer. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Now, how do I get the text in this li to be centered? I'm not actually totally sure, but we're going to try some things. Let's try align items on the li. Okay, perfect. That works. Does it? Okay. I think this to-do list is looking a lot better. I think it's looking like the type of to-do list that you might want to use, actually. There's still a couple things it's not super well, it's not performing super well in a responsive way. When it gets really small, you can see that this form, the contents of it, this grid thing kind of gets pushed off the screen. So that's something we could address. And the way I might address it is, let's do a media query. At media, screen, oh, how do you do a media query again? Media query CSS. Media, screen, and min width. Okay, all that. Let's see. Media, screen, and yeah. Such a weird syntax, but we're doing it. Okay, media, screen, and min width for 80. So this will be affecting anything anything in this media query, any styles that we add, or any classes. These will kick in when the min width is 460, so it'll be 460 pixels and up, which is very small. So I'm going to say let's do max width. So they'll only apply when it's under 480, which is very small. So it'll only apply when very small, and then above it won't apply. And we can even look at what 480 would look like. We might not want to do 480 exactly, but let's say around let's say around like 630. Maybe we can see it up here, 630. This is probably the width where, let's say we want the input and the button to actually go on top of each other instead of being side by side. So at 630 pixels, let's take the input and the button and make them go side by side. And oh, since we're using a grid, it's going to be a little interesting how we do that. We have this label, input, and button. So we'd need to change the whole grid, but sure, let's do it. So it's going to keep all the same styles as the other form property, so I can delete anything that I don't want to change here. But there are a few things I am going to want to change. What we do want to change is, actually instead of having it be a grid, let's just have it be a flexbox. Let's try it. So if it's a flexbox, we don't need justify content, or justify items, we need justify content. Display flex. And then we want the flex direction to be column. There we go. Cool. Row gap, column gap. We don't really need those. We don't need to align items because it's being applied from above. Justify content, we don't even need that. So really, we don't need much. We just need to switch it to a flex box and then have the flex direction be column. And now that's going to look kind of weird because the input and the button were meant to be side by side originally. So they had that like radius, the kind of shared border radius between them. Now they don't. And so to address that, let's just go to our form input and form button, and let's copy that selector for both of them. And let's just do the same border radius on all of them. So border radius is going to be var border radius dash dash, that variable we have. So now they'll be the same on every corner, which is good. So now it's a little more responsive. Another thing is on these small screen sizes, we can actually afford to have these input and buttons span the full width. So we can have the width be 100%. Like that. Okay. So that's mostly it. I think it's looking a lot better. There's still lots that you could do. I think there's one more thing that I might do before I... Oh wait, I'm looking at this button. The font here is Arial for some reason, whereas it's Roboto maybe. But it's Times New Roman on other things. I'm not sure why that is exactly. Here, if we go to Styles and then we go to Computed, this is the Computed tab over here, which you can actually see it if you have Styles selected, but if you go to the Computed tab, it just makes it full. The font should show us what the font is. Font style, normal. Okay, so it's not getting a font. Oh, font family, there it is. Font family, Arial, which I think was a fallback font, right? Okay, so there's no styles applied to it that are changing the font. Oh, because I don't have a font set in here. I'm curious how it ended up as Arial and not Times New Roman. Maybe it's maybe that's default on HTML elements. Must be. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. What I am going to worry about is I want the background color to change when I hover over it. So let's go to this li button here. I'll add another select. Oh wait, that's for these. We could do it for both buttons. Let's do all buttons, which I could just do button. Button will select all button elements. And I'm going to say button hover, actually, which this is called a pseudo selector. So it applies only when some action happens, which in this case is when we hover. So when we hover, we want something to happen to these buttons. Well, we can change the background color to be a little darker or lighter on hover. I guess we could go with lighter. And if we don't want to change it individually for each button, like set a specific color to change it to, we can actually do like a background filter, which I think should work. We say, oh wait. Filter, backdrop filter, I think, right? Yep. Okay, let's see if this works. If it doesn't, then we might need to find a different way to do it. But backdrop filter, and then you can say brightness, I think, right? Backdrop filter. Let's not do a backdrop filter. Let's actually just do individual. Let's do individual hovers for each button. So we could do li button hover, And then we could have the background color. This would be these buttons. We want the background color to be, let's do BG danger, and then let's do BG danger like active. BG danger, active. Or we could just call it hov. Let's call it hov. Or hover. Let's do hover. I'm always indecisive when it comes to naming things. Okay, now that's working. So when you hover over it, they get a little lighter. And then we could do the same thing for this add a cat button, which would be form button hover. If we keep it the same, yeah, it'll change to that color. But we want it to actually, we want to do a BG primary hover. And we can make that just a little lighter. Back down here, BG primary hover. There you go. Cool. Okay. I think the page is looking a lot better. So this is our complete to-do list. There's a lot more we could do, but I think that's a good start. There you go. I hope that was helpful. Yeah. Okay, bye.